It's safe to say that when Cassie Ventura walked into that courtroom on day 2 of Diddy's federal trial, absolutely no one was prepared for what was about to unfold. According to Cassie, Diddy directed everything from what she wore to the lighting in the room to how she was supposed to interact with the person she was having sex with. On paper, Diddy was the ultimate success story, the guy who showed everyone how to turn hip-hop into serious business money. However, that perfect image, that carefully crafted persona of business genius, mentor, and music visionary was hiding something much darker, if you believe what came out in court. Court reporters noted how Diddy arrived looking exactly like the billionaire mogul we all recognize. He walked in, surrounded by his team of high-priced lawyers, nodding confidently to people in the courtroom, even smiling occasionally. But that confidence didn't last long. In fact, multiple witnesses described how Diddy's whole demeanor changed within the first 30 minutes of Cassie's testimony. The swagger disappeared. As Cassie began describing specific incidents from their relationship, Diddy's legal team jumped up with objections repeatedly, almost desperately trying to stop her words. I mean, can you imagine this? The man who built a billion-dollar empire, who controlled the careers of countless artists, suddenly unable to control his own reactions in a courtroom. Witnesses described how Diddy couldn't sit still as Cassie spoke. He started fidgeting with his tie, then his cufflink, just his hands. At one point, court observers noticed him frantically writing notes and passing them to his lawyers. The notes came so fast that one of his attorneys had to put a hand up to slow him down. Meanwhile, another person present said Diddy looked physically ill as Cassie calmly detailed their relationship. A third witness mentioned seeing Diddy close his eyes several times, like he couldn't bear to look at Cassie or hear what she was saying. As Cassie's testimony continued through the afternoon, the courtroom would soon discover exactly why Diddy couldn't keep his cool. And this was just the beginning. According to Cassie, Diddy directed everything from what she wore to the lighting in the room to how she was supposed to interact with the person she was having sex with. When asked about what a freakoff was, Cassie explained it was something she learned about through Diddy about a year into their relationship. He described it as voyeurism, wanting to watch her have sex with someone else. She said that she did it because she was young, just 21 or 22. She didn't know any better, and she wanted to please him. What made Cassie emotional was having to describe the details of these freakoffs and why she did them. When she talked about wanting to do it to please Diddy, that's when she broke down. When asked if she ever enjoyed the freakoffs, she got choked up and said, "I did, but only because I got to spend one-on-one time with Combs, and I really did love him." This speaks to the psychological abuse, in addition to the physical abuse that she allegedly experienced. She's definitely laying out the story of someone who was young, who was influenced by wanting to have a record career. She signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Entertainment led by Diddy. She basically described being enamored by him, loving him, not knowing about certain things sexually, and him teaching her about that. She thought she was going to be with someone in the music industry who was going to help her career, who cared about her, but quickly learned after the freakoffs that wasn't the case. What's also interesting is that Cassie said after that first freakoff, she felt dirty. She didn't want it to do it. And when she brought up the idea of having a conversation about the freakoffs in an email, which the jurors saw, she said she backpedaled because Diddy responded by saying, "I know you don't want to do it." She replied, "Oh, no. Well, it's not that." But clearly, that was just the beginning. That was in 2010, where she first brought it up in an email that she wanted to have a conversation about this. In her words, she didn't want to do it, but she felt like she had to. Now, prosecutors have wasted no time getting right into the alleged abuse that Cassie says she endured for years. And what was underneath wasn't pretty. He would bash my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head when I was down. She also got into the nature of those so-called freakoffs, saying that they involved hiring an escort and they performed under the direction of Diddy. She testified that they happened so frequently, it eventually became a job for her to set them up. Ventura said she did not feel she had much of a choice but to participate, that she feared Diddy would retaliate or potentially blackmail her if she did not. At times, she's had to take deep breaths, pausing her testimony while Diddy appeared to be listening passively with his hands in his lap at the defense table. "I thought I was going to die that night," Cassie said, her voice barely above a whisper as the courtroom leaned forward to hear every word. She was describing an incident at the Four Seasons Hotel that nobody, not the press, not the fans, not even the gossip blogs, had ever heard about before. This hotel incident had stayed buried for years. Cassie explained how she'd kept it secret out of fear. Fear for her career, fear for her safety, and fear that nobody would believe her over someone as powerful as Diddy. But now, sitting on that witness stand, she wasn't holding anything back. According to Cassie, what started as a normal industry after-party turned into a nightmare. She testified that Diddy became enraged after seeing her talking to another music executive. She described how his smile disappeared, how he grabbed her arm so hard it left marks, and how he whispered threats in her ear while maintaining his public face in front of others at the event. The most shocking part? Cassie told the court that Diddy literally dragged her through the hotel lobby to the elevators. She said she was crying and trying to pull away, making enough of a scene that hotel security approached them. But the security guard backed off when he recognized Diddy. He just asked if everything was okay, and when Mr. Combs said yes, he walked away. He didn't even ask me if I was okay, Cassie testified. Then came the photos. Cassie's lawyer presented a series of images she had taken of herself the morning after the incident. Bruises on her arms, a split lip, redness around her neck. These weren't professional photos. They were shaky, clearly taken in a bathroom mirror, which somehow made them even more disturbing. Cassie explained she took them because she was afraid nobody would believe her otherwise. Diddy's legal team jumped into action, trying everything to keep these photos from being shown to the jury. They argued the photos weren't properly authenticated, that they could have been from anything, that they should have been submitted during discovery. The judge denied every objection, and the photos were displayed on the courtroom screens. The jury's reaction said everything. One female juror physically covered her mouth in shock. Two male jurors couldn't even look at the images, turning their heads away. A juror in the back row was seen writing frantically in her notebook, her hand shaking. So, this hotel incident was the bombshell nobody saw coming. There had been no mention of it in previous statements or filings. Diddy's team had no prepared response because they didn't know it was coming. The look of panic on his lawyers' faces was obvious to everyone in the courtroom. Cassie described how Diddy allegedly threw a champagne bottle at her head, missing her by inches and shattering against the wall. She testified that he destroyed the hotel room in a rage, breaking a lamp, flipping a table, and punching a hole in the bathroom door. Most disturbing of all, she claimed he prevented her from leaving the room for over 48 hours, taking her phone and threatening consequences if she tried to call for help. As this part of the testimony ended, everyone in that courtroom turned to look at Diddy. His reaction would become the moment that defined the entire trial and possibly the rest of his career. It was the moment nobody in that courtroom will ever forget. But as Cassie's testimony reached its most damaging points, that carefully maintained mask started slipping. Court reporters who've covered hundreds of celebrity cases said they'd never seen anything like it. Diddy literally transformed before their eyes. From the confident industry titan who walked in that morning to a man who looked cornered and desperate as the afternoon wore on. His legal team was working overtime. Someone sitting right behind them reported that Diddy's main attorney kept putting his hand on Diddy's arm, trying to calm him down. At one point, one of the lawyers actually passed him a note that reportedly said, "Stay calm," in all capital letters. But it wasn't working. Things got so bad that Diddy slammed his hand down on the table when Cassie described an incident at his Hamptons house. He hit it so hard that the sound echoed through the courtroom. The judge immediately stopped proceedings and warned him, "Mr. Combs, if you can't control yourself, I will have you removed from this courtroom." For a moment, it looked like he might actually get thrown out of his own trial. Throughout Cassie's testimony, witnesses saw Diddy constantly shaking his head and mouthing, "That's not true." Whenever she described something particularly damaging, it was like he forgot there was a jury watching his every reaction. One courtroom observer said it looked like a man who had never been called out before, suddenly realizing he couldn't control the narrative. The power shift in that room was incredible. But the real breaking point came when Cassie started talking about threats. She testified that Diddy had allegedly threatened her family if she ever spoke about what happened between them. And then came the bombshell nobody saw coming. She had recordings, actual audio recordings of his voice, making these threats that her lawyer played for the court. That's when Diddy completely lost it. He shot up from his chair and shouted directly at Cassie, "You know, That's not how it happened. His legal team physically grabbed him, trying to pull him back into his seat. It took 3 of his lawyers to restrain him as he continued trying to speak over the recording playing in the courtroom. The judge immediately called for a recess, but the damage was already done. Just when everyone thought they'd heard it all, the real bombshell dropped, and what was underneath wasn't pretty. For years, she'd been quietly collecting proof of what she claimed happened during their relationship. Text messages, emails, photos, all stored in multiple places where Diddy couldn't find them or delete them. Courtroom went completely silent when Cassie mentioned she had text messages from other celebrities who had witnessed Diddy's behavior firsthand. These weren't just random industry people either. According to court transcripts, these were some of Diddy's closest friends and business associates. People who had been in his inner circle for years, who had seen things at private parties and backstage at events that the public never knew about. A person sitting in the gallery described him as looking physically ill when Cassie mentioned these celebrity witnesses. His legal team immediately jumped up, objecting loudly and demanding a sidebar with the judge. They argued these messages shouldn't be allowed as evidence, that they weren't properly submitted during discovery. But the judge wasn't having it. After reviewing the messages in private, he returned to the courtroom and overruled all objections, calling the messages highly relevant to the case and allowing them to be entered into evidence. That decision alone caused Diddy to put his head in his hands. He knew what was coming. One by one, messages from famous names appeared on the courtroom screens. A major rapper had texted Cassie after a Grammy afterparty. "You okay? What I saw tonight wasn't right. You can stay at my place if you need to." Female pop star had written, "I've known him for 15 years, and I've never seen him act like that with anyone else. This isn't normal. Please call me." Most damaging were messages from a longtime producer who had worked with Diddy for decades. He had texted Cassie after witnessing an incident at a studio. "I can't be around this anymore. I told him to get help. Call me when you're safe." These messages completely contradicted what Diddy had been saying publicly, that no one had ever witnessed inappropriate behavior, that these were private matters being twisted by Cassie. Now the court could see that people had witnessed incidents, had been concerned, had reached out to help her. Then came Diddy's own messages. Screenshots showed texts where he appeared to acknowledge incidents. "I'm sorry about last night. You know how I get when I drink. It won't happen again." Another text from him read, "Whatever you need to make this right, just name it. New car, new apartment, whatever you want." A third message series showed what looked like attempts to keep incidents quiet through financial offers. "My lawyer can draw up the paperwork tomorrow. 2 million clean break. You don't talk about anything from the past 5 years." As these messages were read aloud, something interesting happened in the gallery. Several people who had arrived with Diddy that morning, members of his entourage who had been sitting behind him in support, quietly got up and left the courtroom. By the time this part of testimony ended, Diddy was sitting almost alone at his table, just him and his legal team. The question isn't whether Diddy can win this case anymore. It's whether his reputation can ever recover from what the world heard in that courtroom. Where do you stand on this case? Do you think we were all blindsided by the glitter and gold of his fame and success? Is it possible that we missed more clues that might uncover even more disturbing things about the music mogul? Let us know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.